Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I wanted to talk today about an advantage that the 417 or MR762 magazines have over your standard SR25 or AR308 type of magazines as I have here, because I've been watching a lot of videos recently and just people talking a lot about comparisons between battle rifles or DMRs or just the 308 and kind of larger caliber platform in general. And one point that comes up a lot is people talk about how the MR762, as I have here, a little bit of a downside of it is that it has proprietary magazines and that you can't just put in these types of mags. Now, I wouldn't say that these, even though they are pretty common, I wouldn't say that they're a standard by any means. Yeah, a lot of the 308 ARs do use these, but you do have some exceptions. And there are just so many different battle rifles where you have G3s, FALs, and all sorts of different patterns of magazines. However, since these are the most common, they are going to be the one that I will be comparing it to. With that, the main advantage of these magazines, which is also in some ways can also be a disadvantage, but in other ways an advantage, is the length of it. So this does cause an issue with pouches. It's pretty difficult to find pouches for this, but this has an actual advantage as well, and that is when you're playing with bullet seating depth. But if I go ahead and just put these side by side here and just line up the backs, you'll see how much of a difference, and I'll get a bit more of the light in there. So notice how much longer, especially if you go on the internal dimensions, kind of looking at the follower between these two magazines, it is very, very different. If I take so this is a Sierra tipped Match King, hand-loaded, and this benefit of being able to play with the bullet seating depth, of course, it only really helps if you're actually hand-loading. Otherwise, this is kind of wasted, and frankly, at that point, you probably would be better off with something that takes these because the benefit's only there, and it's a lot easier to find pouches. But if you are messing around with the bullet seating depth, of course, the advantage this gives, just to put it simply, and then I can delve more into the weeds later, some bullets do better being more in the case, some more out, of course. It depends on barrel harmonics, all sorts of different stuff there. But the more you have to be able to play with it, the better off in general you are. Of course, you normally don't need to go super far out. If you kind of look at a comparison here at how this tip Match King goes, and this was hand-loaded for this magazine for a Ruger precision rifle. So, of course, it's made to fit in this mag, and you can see how close it comes there to the tip. It still fits. It does need to fit, of course, to be able to feed in the rifle. You can always single feed, but there is potentially a bit of an issue there depending on the rifle. But if you look here, for a comparison, there is significantly more room, or at least significantly relative to how much you need when you're playing with bullet seating depth, which is, overall speaking, not that much, and it does make a pretty big impact. Now, for a more complicated answer, to delve a bit more into the weeds, this really depends. If you start looking at a lot of different 308s, this really depends on where the lands are in your barrel, where they start, and the distance between the magazine and how it feeds in and where it seats it. And I'm going to include that in measurement, which I'm going to go ahead and do actually right now. So I've already measured the distance to the lands, but let's go ahead and do a measurement of the magazine itself, just so we have an actual way to quantify this. So here we go. If you look at the usable space here, as I got measured right there, we've got 2.917 inches. I'm measuring here at about the same spot. You can see this now is a 2.809. Now, everything I just talked about with the measurement differences in length between these two magazines is a very important point regarding the overall length, of course, that you can make your rounds. However, one other point to keep in mind is the jump when the rounds are loaded from the magazine into the rifle itself, and the jump to the lands there. There's always, on pretty much every single magazine-fed rifle, there's always going to be some jump. On the MR762, you can get it closer to the lands than on, at least on most 308 ARs that I'm aware of, and you could probably because there's a bunch of differences in the throat on a barrel. I imagine you could probably get some custom barrels and all that, but just speaking in generalities here, for the most part, you are going to have less of a jump to the lands when you have a longer magazine like this. So just keep in mind that there is that as well to consider. And that's also going to be different depending on what type of bullets you're using, how heavy, and just the general shape of the bullets as well. That is the advantage of these types of magazines, although they are proprietary and there's no other companies that make aftermarket 417 or MR762 magazines. If you are hand loading, that is extremely beneficial to have that option. Otherwise, it is quite difficult to find pouches for the 417 magazines. It is a lot easier to find 308 mags that fit this. Actually, quite a few 308 pouches I've found don't actually fit the 417 mags just because they are so much significantly larger in every way imaginable. They're so much fatter, which is the biggest issue I found when looking for pouches. But some pouches that I've personally found that work pretty well. If you're looking for just a single magazine pouch, actually repurposing the 9x39, like the Val magazine pouches, the Russian ones, you can usually fit in one of these, and it's a pretty good fit, not too tight. There's a lot of German magazine pouches that will fit these as well. Zenteron is one that I use quite a bit of. And then First Spear, I believe, makes a single magazine pouch for this as well. But hopefully you found this informative. Just wanted to talk about that one advantage. Ultimately, there is a lot to consider, and I'm not saying that this makes the MR762 the best 762 by any means, because I think it really depends on your own case. For me, I think this is the best, and that's why I bought it. But a lot to consider, and hopefully this helps to make a decision if you are in the market at looking at picking up this type of rifle. So thank you all for watching, and let me know if you have any other questions on this or on anything else, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Take care.